Welcome to the Book Show. Thanks for joining us again this week. What's been happening in the book trade, Carol?
Well, all the new stock for Christmas has been flying in the door of the women's bookshop. I don't know whether other shops are in the same position, but we've run out of space, basically. We're going to have to start stacking things on the floor, I think. Fabulous new books for Christmas arriving already. Personally, I have been reading Richard Flanagan's The Narrow Road to the Deep North. It's the Booker winner, and it's absolutely marvellous. Loving it, loving it. It's
getting great reviews everywhere, isn't it?
Fantastic reviews, and deservedly the Booker winner, even though I would have loved Ali Smith to win it with her marvellous, clever, playful novel, How to Be Both, it was called. Michelle de Cresta, now you've met her, haven't you?
I have, yes. Some years ago when I was a judge of the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, she won the Australian and New Zealand regional section.
Right.
So she's a very fine writer.
Right. Questions of Travel was her most recent novel. This is a short story, well, a little novella maybe, called Springtime. It's a ghost story. So it's a wonderful little hardback, perfect stocking filler. Atul Gawande, Being Mortal, he's a doctor. And this is a profoundly important book. I think it's about old age and dying and how our culture deals with it. Going to be absolutely fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading that. In complete contrast, Graham Norton, the wonderful Graham Norton, with this extraordinary expression on his face. Yeah, it's a great cover, isn't it?
It is a great cover.
And he's taken that title from Faye Weldon, you know, her famous novel from years ago, The Lives and Loves of a She-Devil. So he's the he-devil, of course, the wonderful, funny Graham Norton. And, of course, our own Saul Emio, the wonderful boys who are the fabulous opera singers. So a lovely book about them. And I'm going to be reviewing The Claimant by Jeanette Turner Hospital. Fabulous.
That's a big book.
Yeah. And what about you? You're interviewing some very interesting people this
Yes,
week.
I am. I'm talking to Chris Rupe later on from SPQR.
Right.
It's the iconic restaurant on Ponsonby Road, and this is their 22nd year on the strip there. So Penguin have just published this very beautiful book.
Right.
Penguin are also the publishers of this rather wonderful book, Rooms to Love, words by Leanne Year and photography by Lani Nicholson, a book on home and decorating and redecorating and interiors. A very beautiful book.
Absolutely gorgeous, yes. So that's going to be a wonderful Christmas gift as well.
It is. Chris, first up, congratulations on this very fine new book, which marks SPQR's 22 years on Ponsonby Road. SPQR has, of course, become almost legendary over these 22 years, and I think it's fair to actually even use that overword used, iconic. You know, with those tables outside with the white crisp tablecloths, and then there's the interior area inside the portico, and then the lovely, more expensive interior. I think it is fair to call it iconic. What do you think it is that's earned SPQR this great popularity and admiration from its many regular clients?
Well, a lot of people ask me this question, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, they do from time to time as time goes on, you know. What makes SPQR so popular, you know? And I do think it's, you know, and I have thought about this from time to time. You know, first off, you know, I often treat SPQR as a being. I speak to her often and ask her how she's going, things like that. But ultimately, I think, you know, it's the main culminations, I think, of the atmosphere, the staff, lighting, its style, its casualness, its privacy. And not only that, we cater for everyone and all sorts, and a cross range of prices as well. You could have something, you know, that's reasonably not expensive to something that is quite expensive, you know. The other thing is that you can be yourself. You can be yourself in Ponsonby, and you can be yourself also in SPQR.
It seems, and of course then there's the wonderful food, the big selection, what have you, and it seems fair that then that food gets the lion's share of the book. I mean, you've very generously given us more than 90 recipes from the restaurant's menu, and they've been adapted for the home chef. I made this saffron risotto with prawns dish the other night. It was a great success. So, so the food is a major consideration, isn't it, as well?
Yes, it is. Penguin approached me a year ago and said, "Listen, I've got an idea. Why doesn't SPQR do a cookbook?" And I said to myself, and thought for a while, and I thought, well, I think it's a great idea, because 22 years is a long time, and I would like SPQR to be documented somewhere, and in the form of a cookbook. That's what we chose. And yes, the recipes we chose right over the span of the 22-year period, and we compiled them, put them together with a fabulous photographer.
Mm. I mean, how do you actually choose the recipes? Because there are so many of them. I mean, there are so many on the existing menu, but you've taken 22 years. How did you, was there a lot of debate and discussion about what you would include and what you would leave out?
Not really.
No?
No, it was quite straightforward. What is we started from, the ones that we liked most and worked backwards, and there wasn't really a lot left, to be honest with you.
Right.
So it was a very, very simple process. Actually, the whole process of making the book, I might add, was very easy. It was a very easy process. Yeah. For us, it was coming in, organising the schedule, taking the photographs. I think we shot, maybe 15 shots a day of different items on the menu, and then we worked through from there.
Tell us something about the photographer and working with her. And she's done other work for you?
No, this is the first time that she has worked with us. Her name's Tamara West. She's a very talented photographer. And initially her and I sat down and we had a discussion about what line the photography would take and what feel it would have. And it was important to both of us that the photography was tomorrow photography, not present. So we chose to coincide with the atmosphere of SPQR. So we wanted the photography to be slightly dark, but clear, a little bit edgy, and actually almost 100% of the photographs were taken just in natural light.
Go on.
First thing in the morning from 8 o'clock in the morning through until 11, the natural light that just shone through the entrance of SPQR, the photographs were taken right there.
Right. And of course, it's not just the food photography and the styling. It's also, there are some lovely shots of the interior, exterior of the building, the restaurant, and also the staff.
Oh yes. Just recently, actually, I spoke to someone who was in the restaurant on a Friday night, and I did ask him, actually. I said, well, what is it for you that you like about this? He was European. And he said to me, of all the restaurants around, this is the one that reminds him most of his hometown and of where he's from. So it obviously has that European feel. And in fact, we haven't changed the decor or the atmosphere at all. Actually, we did. We painted the roof one year. Not that people really realise that, but we did. We painted the roof one year. But it pretty much has been very simple lines. The initial owners, Stuart and daughter Dryberg, were movie people, and they set up SPQR in the initial stages as a film prop, and it's kind of lasted the test of time, I think.
Obviously, with the comparatively little change in the menu over the years, essentially an Italian menu, isn't it? I guess if you drop something out, you get customers complaining, please put it back. Does that happen?
Yes, it does. Prego and SPQR pretty much have been around in Ponce Road for a similar amount of time. I think they're 5 years older than SPQR. Some research that I did overseas with some restaurants, the Wolseley in London, the Ivy, Balthazar in New York, ones that have been around for a while.
Yep.
They don't change their menu. They have a few specials, but the menu stays the same. Prego's the same thing. They've had that same menu when I first worked there as a waiter 25 years ago. It hasn't changed. SPQR, I've tried to adopt a similar philosophy as well, and I learnt once that I changed the menu, so let's have a change, and the amount of calls and things like that, you've taken this, so you had this, it's just too difficult, really, So, as a result of that, what we try to do, we try to make every dish the same, and we always make it consistently the same, and try and make it better.
Well, I was there this last Saturday night and had the pork belly, your famous pork belly,
yes,
and
yes.
I did notice that there was, and I always have that,
Do you?
but I did notice that there was a starter special,
Yes.
which was quite different
Yes.
to the pork belly that I had as a main.
Yes,
So you
yes.
chefs are able to do changes through the daily
Oh,
specials,
yes.
aren't they?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. You, of course, well, you're famous for your pizzas as well. Tell us something about the pizzas. And with pizzas, I mean, today it seems to be largely a takeaway business, but I notice when I'm eating at your place that a lot of people actually eat pizzas in, don't they, as well as a steady stream taking them away. Is that an important part of the business for you?
To me, it's quite an integral part of the business because it allows us to show we have a form of casualness, you know. And for me personally, a nice pizza. Actually, pizza is a science, you know. There's Domino's, there's
Yes.
SPQR, there's Prego, there's, you know. So it depends what type of pizza you want, you know. But yeah, no, I absolutely believe so. You know, the essence of the pizza and a lovely glass of wine, not too filling, reasonably healthy if it's made properly, you know.
Yeah, good. I did read where you, back in 1999, you said you were going to, from now on, you were paying more attention to the food than to the bar,
Yes.
because it was more of a bar prior to 1999. Now, of course, it's known as a restaurant where you can get jolly good wine, but it's, tell us a bit about that and what caused you to make that decision and how that's worked out for you.
Well, back in those days, bars, in my personal opinion, this is, you know, had a reasonably short lifespan. And unless you added a food component, then you had more chance of longevity. So anyway, we chose to move more into the food line so that we would have longevity. And you have to have that good, you know, now we're just readjusting ourselves with the influx, implosion, explosion, whatever you like to call it, of the restaurants that have entered into the market, into the Auckland CBD and Ponsonby. So we have to restructure ourselves, and so now we're going back, we're now re-altering ourselves again, and we're having probably food at a different price point, more food at a different price point, and rather than just wine, we're now adding another dimension, which is cocktails.
You've also been quoted as saying that SPQR, you're passionate about the detail, and of course you believe in generosity. Tell us about detail and generosity.
Generosity, well, you know, first off, you know, I'm extremely grateful to the local clientele and to our regulars that have supported us over the years. And that's one thing I do like about, you know, our hood, our area, Ponsonby, you know. They are very supportive, and for which, you know, we are very, very, very grateful for. So, in saying that, generosity, well, you know, it just comes natural, you know, a fair price for a fair meal. You know, I have, you know, children don't pay for desserts when they come in. If there's a problem with the meal, and I shouldn't really say this, and I don't want everyone to know, but, you know, it comes off the bill, you know. I'm not going to haggle over something that costs me a minimal amount, you know. And yes, yeah, generous. Over the years, we had a lot of SPQR parties for which, you know, we shouted, you know, drinks right up until 11 o'clock as a thank you for everyone, for their patronage. You know, not a lot of places, I don't believe, say thank you to their customers for their patronage, and that's the way that we do that.
Well, thank you for coming in this evening, and again, warmest congratulations on both the book and the 22nd birthday.
Thank you very much.
The Claimant by Jeanette Turner Hospital. She is a marvellous Australian writer whose reputation really should be greater in New Zealand and in England. I think she's well known in the States because she lives a lot of the time there. She's Emeritus Professor of Literature at the University of North Carolina, has also been a Special Professor of Literature at the University of Columbia in New York, and of course she's a Professor at the University of Queensland as well. She's written something like 7 or 8 novels before this one. They're all big, they're all fascinating, and also a huge number of short stories as well. Jeanette Turner Hospital. This book, The Claimant, it's epic, but it's totally satisfying and wonderful. I loved it. It has a huge time span from the resistance in the resistance in World War II France, right through to New York in current time, Queensland in the 90s and in current time. So a big time frame, but also geographically widely spread. And the characters change names and identities, but never at any point did I not know who was who, even though it's quite convoluted and quite complex. One of the things she's asking in this novel is, why would anybody need to change not just their name, but their entire identity? Now, the whole pretext of it is based on the Tichborne case, which was a very famous fraud case that rocked Australia and Britain in the late 19th century. The media went crazy about it. She's changed it to the Vanderbilt family. So the claimant is apparently the heir to the Vanderbilt fortune. Now, it explores class issues, it explores wealth and privilege, and the media are going crazy about whether this Australian, he raises cattle and he's a butcher living in Queensland, whether he could possibly be the heir to the Vanderbilt fortune. Of course, the snobbery says, well, of course he couldn't. A butcher in Australia with an Australian accent, he couldn't possibly be one of us. So those class issues she explores. There's also a lot of stuff about fraud. One of the main characters, wonderful Cap, as she's known as a girl, who changes her name and is Lilith for a lot of the novel. She is the daughter of a woman who rescued people during the resistance, in France during the war. She becomes an art expert working for Sotheby's, and she travels all around the world, particularly to the Middle East and to often quite dangerous countries, assessing art for very wealthy people who sometimes don't want others to know how they acquired it or the means through which they're selling it. She, at the same time, organises documents, escape routes, safe houses, very much the way her mother did, for people who were in political danger in current modern countries. It's absolutely fascinating. It's about spying, it's about fraud, it's about changing your name and your identity. The characters are full and rounded, you care about them enormously, and the whole thing is a totally satisfying, large, indulgent read that, well, I couldn't wait to get home to read the next section of it. I highly recommend The Claimant by Jeanette Turner Hospital.
Drawing from inspirational New Zealand home interiors, stylist and author Leanne Yare and photographer Lani Nicholson share clever styling tricks for living areas, kitchens, bedrooms and bathrooms, through to those often neglected spaces such as hallways, laundries and home offices in their beautiful new book, Rooms to Love. It is a gorgeous book and it's filled with decorating ideas catering to every budget. It is a must-have for anyone seeking to transform their home into something more stylish. Leanne and Lani, welcome to the show and congratulations on your spectacular new book.
Thank you.
When you're putting a book together like this, which comes first, the text or the photographs, and how closely do you have to work together?
We work really closely together. I typically shoot all the images first, and then the images, you work around the images, don't you? And
the images are really what give people the inspiration, and then the words are about all the tips and tricks of sort of how to get the look,
right,
and all those little bits of advice. So it is kind of just a fine line just to get the balance right, but typically it is more around the images, and then the text usually follows.
Right. So before you even get there, of course, you've obviously done a lot of work in deciding, what you're going to do. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a pretty clear picture with Rooms to Love that we wanted it to be about style rather than about a typical sort of home story, and so that's why we decided to break it up into rooms.
In the book, you start, at the very beginning, where you say that the entrance to your home, I quote you here, should be like putting on your best dress.
Absolutely. And it's funny how many people forget that. So, I mean, when you're welcoming guests, it's your entrance that says everything about what to expect inside your home.
Sets the tone.
Absolutely.
And so you found plenty of homes with beautiful entrances, though, obviously, because you've got some lovely shots.
We
Yes,
have,
yeah.
and I mean, it can be as simple as just painting your front door an interesting colour. You know, it doesn't have to be particularly complicated. Sometimes it's just the simple ideas that really give it the wow factor.
Taking some clutter away, keeping it, you know, just keeping it nice and pared back.
All those dirty shoes, finding somewhere for those to go.
Yes, because things do tend to get dumped at the front door.
They
don't
do.
Yeah, yes.
Yep.
Well, tell us about your approach to the home office then, because my office is often commented on about the chaos state it's in. What's your approach to that?
My own office is quite similar, actually.
A little bit, yeah, mine too.
So I think these days people are looking to get the most out of every little piece of their home. So home offices often get relegated into another part of the home rather than having a dedicated room. Not many people can afford to dedicate a whole room to become a home office. So they end up being squeezed into little, you know, even cupboards or little nooks or part of the dining room. Lots of people end up with their computer on the dining table or just in like a little corner of the lounge. So we're just trying to inspire people how they can make that home office part of the rest of the home and style it in a very similar way.
Storage is key, I think.
Storage is key
for an office, and I think, especially with creative people, I think that's the area where you can put up your photos and, you know, even a mood board or something like that. But so we've given ideas for just a nice kind of presentable way to put up that inspiration.
Because whereas I work in full-time in a home office, most people, of course, are just paying the accounts, aren't they, or doing odd things, or emailing their family in some other part of the world. And
on the internet, or, you know, they might be doing, I mean, home offices are also crafty spaces, so they're not necessarily about just doing the books. A lot of people spend time creating artworks, or they might sew, or the kids might craft. So they're kind of more of what we call a create space.
Right.
Rather than just a home office.
Right. Let's talk about kitchens, because you say in the book that kitchens are often relegated to ward or compact spaces, so make the most of every inch.
That's right.
Storage again.
Kitchens are expensive. You know, they're a big ticket item when it comes to renovating. And so I think, you know, when people are working on a budget, usually that means that there's compromise, and kitchens do end up probably being smaller than what we'd like them to be, considering the amount of time that you spend in the kitchen. They should probably be almost as big as the lounge. So yeah, it's about thinking about every single little bit of space, and one of the biggest tips I can suggest to people is take your cabinetry to the ceiling, because people end up with this big gap between the top of their tall cupboards and the ceiling, which is really just a big dust and dirt collector, and or just bits and pieces get thrown up there.
Gets cluttered, doesn't
because they've got nowhere else to go. So,
you know, I was thinking when I was looking at the book that actually, if people are building a new home, they should have this book as well, because you've got so many beautiful interiors from such a wide range of homes that would inspire them there. It's not just a matter of renovating the space that's already there, it's actually creating it initially, isn't it?
I think new homes are often where people struggle the most to get to bring character and personality into their homes, whereas older homes already have an abundance of character. So yes, I think it's really important for people with new builds to really think about how they can inject some personality into their homes.
Right. So now we've got the kitchen and we've cooked the meal and we're going to eat it somewhere. You've got a whole section, of course, on dining rooms or eating spaces.
That's right.
What's your...
Well, in this busy day and age, I think people have become sort of a little bit eat on the run, almost, or they'll sit at the kitchen bar, or they'll grab their meal and sit on the sofa in front of the TV watching the news. I mean, we've all been guilty of that. So I guess what I've suggested is that we actually take a step back and kind of make the dining room become, you know, almost the formal dining room that it was in years past, where families can sit around and actually share some sort of quality family time together and talk about the day and talk about what the kids have been doing at school, and a lot of the things that busy families these days, you know, really start to lose.
And what about photographing these? Is it more difficult to photograph a kitchen than a dining space, or is any room much the same?
It's funny, I walk into a home and some homes are really easy. They're not easy necessarily, interiors, but some are just easier than others, and it's really interesting when I walk in there and just to get that feel for a home. But it's usually just about the light. Like some homes, skylights can be really harsh, or it can just be a bit tricky to photograph. Bathrooms can be tricky with the mirrors and reflective surfaces, but in general, dining, lounges, it's pretty good.
Leanne, in your introduction, you say that the biggest piece of advice you can give is to do what you do with love.
Absolutely.
Can you expand a little on this? And
well, the last thing that I personally want to see in people's homes are homes that are all matched and look like a catalogue. We want to see, like when you walk into someone's home, I want to feel and be able to see the story of the people that live there. And it's all about the crazy little bits that people collect that sort of tell that story. So, things that have been brought back from travels or kids' art, or, hobbies and passions that, people are into. It's those sorts of things that really put, that stamp of personality onto a home. And regardless of whether, you're a minimalist or you like lots of things around you, I think that's what's really important.
can you say something about budgets? Because you do stress that this book is for all budgets. And
it is. And while there are some lovely designer pieces showcased in some of the homes, there are a host of really budget-friendly little tips and tricks. Things like paint and wallpaper are just sort of the all-time go-to. They can transform a room on next to nothing in just a few hours' work.
We're just picking up second-hand items, like a paint, and it's pretty cheap and cheerful way of transforming a room.
That's good. The last section of the book is about colour. And you've got a whole range of colours there, and you show how. Could you like to tell us something about your colour philosophy?
We get asked a lot, and I especially get asked a lot about where to start. People have kind of got an idea of what they'd like to do, but they just get stuck on that starting point. And so we've put together, I guess, a series of mood boards, for want of a better word, which just show some favourite things put together with maybe some patterns on a piece of beautiful wrapping paper, or some little vintage photographs, or some objects that are either a beautiful texture or colour, and put them all together to show people how they can kind of build that mood board. And then it just gives them a really good sense of where to start and what colours look really great together.
Well, it really works. I'd like to offer you my congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
we've just learned from the publishers that the book is already being reprinted, having just been
So
published.
exciting.
So well done and congratulations, and thank you for
Thank
coming in
you.
and seeing us this evening.
Thank you
Thanks for having us.
That's the show for this week, folks. Thanks for joining us. Next week, join us again, please. I'll be talking to Patrick Reynolds about his beautiful new book, Bungalow. Carol?
And, well, I'll be interviewing Tina Makariti. She's up in Auckland for the Ladies Literati, which the Women's Bookshop runs every year. It's this Sunday, and it's fully booked out. But I will be talking to Tina while she's up here. Her novel is a very important New Zealand novel. It's called Where the Rakohu Bones Sings. Set a lot of it in the Chatham Islands, so that'll be fascinating. Please join us next week.